So you want a new M2, and look, fair enough, it's the perfect sports car formula. Driver-focused dynamics, rear-wheel drive, the choice of auto or manual transmission, the very latest in BMW M goodness, all powered by the same epic twin-turbo 6 as you'll find in the M3 and the M4, just slightly detuned. But the problem is, at around about $120,000 here in Australia, it's $30,000 more than the original M2, and according to many that have driven it, the ultra engaging and addictive driving characteristics of the previous generation have been lost a little bit. Also, it's bloody ugly. Plus, for the same asking price on the used market, there's a whole bunch of other cars that will simply give you more bang for your buck than the new M2. We're talking about cars that, like the M2, are two-door, rear-wheel drive, semi-practical coupes that either nearly match or surpass what the M2 is offering. Starting with a car that we doubt any new M2 buyer would ever look at, but they do hate that it exists in the first place, especially when it's leaving them in the dust. It's the Ford Mustang, but not just any Ford Mustang, it's the R-Spec. Now, look, we know the R-Spec is exclusive to Australia, but most markets, they do have some version of this. We're talking a fire-breathing, supercharged V8 under the bonnet, 6-speed manual transmission, and all the suspension, brakes, tyre, and aesthetic treatments to suit. And yes, this V8 muscle car offers a completely different experience to the honed and sophisticated offerings of the M2, but if sheer performance sits high on your priority list, the Mustang obliterates the M2. 522 kilowatts versus 338, 800 newton meters of torque versus 550. And with the new M2 gaining some weight, the Mustang is only 80 kilograms heavier. Overall, this thing blows the M2 off the road in every way, short of the Euro image. Or how about saving yourself potentially $40,000 and get yourself a slightly more sophisticated V8 muscle car, only this time it's not American, it's the Lexus RCF. Okay, the RCF is far more of a grand touring sports car than what the M2 is offering, but with a naturally aspirated 5-litre V8 under the bonnet and one that is more powerful than the twin-turbo 6 in the BMW, even just in engine terms, the Lexus provides a very compelling alternative. Plus, the build quality and reliability are class-leading, the interior offers genuine luxury. In terms of the power-to-weight ratios, the RCF is incredibly close to the M2, and with the new BMW most likely selling in far higher numbers than the RCF, the Lexus is more exclusive. Or how about another non-American muscle car? It's the 2016 to 2018 Mercedes-Benz C63 AMG Coupe. A twin-turbo 6 is one thing, but a twin-turbo V8 certainly ups the ante. 700 newton meters versus 550. Even in terms of the power-to-weight ratio, the AMG dominates the BMW. And while you may think that the C63 Coupe is surely a whole size larger than the M2, they're actually about the same. They're the same height. The AMG is actually slightly narrower, and it's only 17 centimeters longer, which is about that much. Okay, the BMW is a generation newer in technology, but it's not like the Merc is lacking for anything as far as the features go. And anyway, you buy an M2 for the driving experience and the whole image and atmosphere that comes with the premium German sports car. And the C63 has that in spades. But as impressive as it is to say, oh, I drive a BMW M2, or, oh, I drive an AMG C63, you know what tops that? Oh, I drive an Aston Martin. That's right, for the same asking price as a new M2, you can plant yourself in a 2007 to 2009 Aston Martin V8 Vantage. In fact, you could save yourself potentially $30,000 and buy an early 4.3-litre Vantage, or for around about $5,000 less, get the 4.7. Guys, if you are seriously considering buying the new M2, you can have an Aston Martin for less money. Okay, sure, it doesn't have a warranty, but if you're saving as much as 30 grand, just pay for anything that goes wrong because you'll have an Aston Martin. Okay, both the 4.3 and the 4.7 are down on power versus the M2, and they are both substantially older models these days. But again, for the reasons that you buy an M2, the Aston more than meets these needs. Plus, with that barking V8, the extra tactility thanks to arguably less refinement, smaller size, and less weight, we actually argue that the Vantage will feel faster and more engaging anyway. But what if you want all of the stuff that those Astons provide, but you must have a newer car? Easy, it's the Jaguar F-Type. For new M2 money, you're going to be looking at 2014 to 2018 F-Types packing the 3-litre supercharged 6, or for ever so slightly more than new M2 money, you can land yourself in one of the supercharged V8s. If outright straight line performance is your thing, look, you're going to have to spend the extra and get the V8. But in saying that, many that have driven both claim that the 6-cylinder to be the sweetest steerer through the corners. Most on the used market will be fitted with automatic transmissions, but there are manuals out there. And even though Jaguar doesn't have the greatest reputation when it comes to reliability, at least you'll avoid all of the issues that are associated with how ugly the new M2 is, because that Jag is just objectively beautiful. But what if the Jag's reliability concerns are just a bit too stressful, but you can't let go of that thought of having a more premium brand than BMW sitting in your garage? Easy, it's the Porsche 911. And it's one hell of a 911 for this asking price. Yes, there are classic air-cooled models at this $120,000 budget, but we're thinking you're looking at new M2s because they not only offer crazy levels of performance, they're also lovely to live with on a daily basis, and they don't require classic car levels of care and attention. So the Porsche for you is the 2005 to 2007 997 Carrera S. Okay, it's down on power versus the M2. It can't match the BMW for the power to weight ratio either. It's lacking in tech. It's now generations old. And even though it does technically have back seats, only the smallest of humans can really use them. See, the 997 was a return to form for Porsche. Gone with the polarizing looks and the questionable reliability of the 996, it's the last 911 to have non-electric steering. It's large enough to be practical every day, but it's smaller and lighter than the more recent models. It's basically the perfect blend of everything that made the 911 arguably the iconic sports car, yet it's modern enough to be a genuine daily driver. Honestly, guys, look, as good as the new M2 is, buying one is just kind of like walking into a dealership and buying another car. But acquiring a 997, that marks an extraordinary moment in your life. These things are seriously special. But look, enough romanticizing about old European sports cars. What if you're putting this new M2 on finance and therefore you need a far more recent car? Well, why not save yourself thousands on those repayments and consider one of these? The 2022 Nissan Z, or Z, and the 2019 to 2022 Toyota Supra. Both match the BMW for levels of tech and features, both offer near identical power to weight ratios to the new M2, both are all about driver enjoyment, and both undercut the BMW for price. Guys, you can have a Supra for $45,000 less than the new M2. $45,000! And technically, underneath it's a BMW anyway. The Nissan, on the other hand, will save you a less impressive $20,000 to $30,000. But still, that is a truckload of cash, especially if you don't really require the slightly better practicality in the M2. But look, what if you just must have the BMW, or a BMW? That's totally sweet. How about one of these? The most direct competitor to the new M2 is the old M2, but rather than having to make do with the base model of the new one, for potentially $40,000 less, or potentially $10,000 more, you can have a 2018 to 2021 M2 competition, which matches the new car for the power to weight ratio, obviously provides everything that made the M2 so revered in the first place, and it looks utterly stunning, especially when compared to the disappointing design of the new one. And look, yes, it's all lovely having the latest, greatest new model of car, but is this another case of BMW's old stuff being better than its new stuff? And while we're on BMW and their old stuff being better than their new stuff, why bother with the detuned M4 power plant in the new M2? Just get an M4, and not the ugly one. And not just any M4 either. For new M2 money, you can easily get behind the wheel of an F82 LCI competition, or possibly even a CS. Look, yes, it's a little bit larger than the M2, but this results in better practicality. And according to those in the know, with the new M2 being a bit more sensible, maybe the M4 CS and even the Comp will provide more thrills per dollar than the new car. And before we get to our final new M2 alternative, which is sure to upset many of you, if you happen to own any of the cars that we've mentioned in this list and you live in Sydney or Newcastle or somewhere close and you'd be happy for us to feature it here on ReDriven, can you either let us know in the comments down below or message us on Instagram or Facebook or jump on redriven.com and contact us through that, because we would love to feature your car. Oh, also, can you hit that like and subscribe button? And if you're enjoying what we do here at ReDriven, why not go and support us on Patreon? We'd be so appreciative. The link is down there somewhere. Okay, final M2 alternative, and I'm really sorry, but we're going to be breaking our own rules here because this one isn't rear-wheel drive, it's all-wheel drive, but it's about the same size as the M2, and it's actually lighter, and it absolutely destroys the M2 for performance. In fact, it's like in a whole different category of car. It's the R35 GTR. I'm really sorry. Look, we know the chances of anyone genuinely cross-shopping between a new M2 and an older GTR are slim to none. But then Nissan does make for a compelling argument. Firstly, we're talking about the 2008 to 2012 GTR here, which even though they are getting on a bit, they're still really nice for interior accommodation. They offer similar levels of practicality. They're lacking in terms of infotainment tech, but that's pretty easily fixed. But where the M2 is pumping out 338 kilowatts and 550 newton meters through the rear wheels, the GTR is tearing the asphalt from the dirt beneath thanks to its 404 kilowatts and 628 newton meters going to all four wheels. Plus, as we've seen for years now, even with some light modifications, those power numbers can skyrocket. We also argue that there's just something special about the R35. This was the car that upset the supercar establishment back when it came out. And ignoring any maintenance or reliability concerns, the fact that you can have one now for the same price as a new M2, it does make for a very appealing proposal. Which brings us to the big question, which one would you buy? Would you stick with the new M2 or buy one of these alternatives or something completely different? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Starting with a car that we doubt any new M2 buyer would ever look at, but they hate that it exists. My brain. Or how about another non-American? But we're thinking you're looking at new M2s because they not only offer crazy levels of performance,